name is Ene, and I've lived in Nigeria for 12 years, and I now reside in the United States of America. I'm here to clear up some misconceptions people have had about Africa. A lot of times, people make misconceptions about Africa that these misconceptions become their basic understanding about Africa. There are many misconceptions about Africa, but the three I'm going to talk about are: 1. Africa is a country that everybody speaks the same language in. 2. People in Africa are illiterate. 3. Everyone in Africa is poor. When Africa is heard of by many people around the world, especially in the US, the first thing that comes to mind is this huge country across the Atlantic that everybody speaks the same language. But actually, according to National Geographic, Africa is the continent with 54 countries and over 2,000 spoken languages. The reason for this misconception is not necessarily the people's fault for misunderstanding it, but actually it's because of the fact that there is lack of information about Africa, and Africa is really one of the most least emphasized topics everywhere around the world. And when I once watched an episode of the show Jesse, and it actually features in this episode, the kids actually went to a country in Africa, but it doesn't actually say the name, but the kids instead referred to the country as Africa as a whole. And this kind of it kind of made me kind of wonder if what about the kids that watch the show, that they would totally be built on a false misconception about it. They will be built on a false knowledge about Africa. I'm thinking it's this country across the Atlantic. The majority of people think that people in Africa are uneducated, and when I came to the United States, a lot of people that I met usually asked me if English was taught in schools in Africa, or if people even went to school in Africa. But in Africa, people actually go to school because according to the biography of Chinua Achebe, a Nigerian writer, because of his education in Africa, he was able to write the story Things Fall Apart, which is widely read in schools around the world. The last most common misconception about Africa is that everyone in Africa is poor. According to National Geographic Channel, Africa is the poorest continent, and it makes up for 2.4 of the world's GDP per capita. But that does not. The places I lived in Africa had some pretty middle class citizens living in it. Even though Africa is a third world continent, and many people are struggling to survive, that doesn't make nearly everybody poor. Thank you. These misconceptions are usually used by many people intentionally or unintentionally as an insult slang towards most Africans to make them feel bad. It leaves a negative connotation towards Africans, because I'm saying this because when I was in 7th grade, a classmate of mine actually insulted me, saying that I should go back to my illiterate country. By country he meant Africa. And the same insult has also been used on my brothers and my relatives. I hope by the end of this video that you actually learn from it and learn to address Africa in a much more better perspective.
The hurt doesn't show, but the pain still grows. So stranger to you and me.